My upbringing was typical of that of a middle-class family residing in Chicago's suburbs. My dad, Tom, retired after 30 years of service, and my mom, Sarah, is still on staff at Lincoln Elementary as a secretary. They did all they could for me, but we were never rich. Before I changed my name to Emma Reynolds, I was Emma Mitchell. I was employed by the mid-sized accounting company Anderson and Partners after completing my bachelor's degree in accounting. I assumed that would be my life. Get up, go to work, come home, repeat. The pay was good, and the work was consistent. Then there was that October Tuesday when it rained, and I ran into Marcus outside of Starbucks. He had an important meeting to attend. While I was in a mad dash to grab my coffee before work, I wanted to die there as my coffee spilt all over his very costly clothes. I began to apologize as I wiped his jacket with napkins. "I'll pay for the dry cleaning, I swear." Rather than becoming furious, he chuckled. "It's not important. However, you may compensate me by joining me for dinner this evening." After that meal, more and more came to pass. When compared to my previous dates, Marcus was completely unique. He was born to business magnates James and Victoria Reynolds. Their company, Reynolds Industries, was a major player in the Midwest manufacturing sector. On the other hand, he never put me in my place. My real family, as he put it, was something he adored. When he brought me to see his parents at their Lake Forest estate, everything changed. The way Victoria Reynolds examined me as if I were a foreign object attached to her shoe is an image I will never forget. She proclaimed, "So, Tasha," while twirling her wine glass, "Marcus tells us you're an accountant." "Yes, I am," I responded, my voice quivering just a little. "How?" "Practical," she remarked, her smile delicate and almost non-existent. "And your parents?" "My mom is a school secretary and my dad is a retired police officer." She thought I was implying they were criminals when I told her that. Throughout dinner, James Reynolds ignored me in favor of talking to Marcus about his job. I wholeheartedly accepted Marcus's proposal 3 months later. Silently congratulating us, his parents showed up at our wedding. Over time, I hoped to win them over. Love, I believed, would suffice. Marcus graciously offered me his penthouse in the heart of Chicago after our honeymoon on Bali, with windows that extended from floor to ceiling and looked out over Lake Michigan. The space was larger than my parents' whole house. It seemed as if I were in a surreal dream. Our marriage lasted 2 months before I found out I was expecting. I told Marcus, and he was so happy that he spun me around our enormous living room. Upon hearing the news, even James and Victoria appeared to soften a bit. However, Victoria couldn't help but comment, "Well, at least the child will have good breeding on one side." We welcomed our kid into this world on a chilly December morning. Marcus was certain that he'd be named James Jr. like his dad. Holding him made everything else fade into the background. Neither the persistent nitpicking by Victoria nor the rumors circulated at the after-hours parties hosted by Reynolds Industries regarding the accountant who married the boss's son. We thought JJ was great. It was a good first 2 years. Coming home early to play with JJ, reading him bedtime tales, and taking us both to the park on weekends, Marcus took to parenthood like a fish out of water. As I took care of JJ at our home, I worked part-time as an accountant while he thrived as financial director at Reynolds Industries. Despite their distaste for me, Victoria and James lavished their grandchild with costly presents and made frequent visits. Things began to shift, though, around the time JJ became 3 years old. "Big project at work, honey," Marcus would say every time he arrived home later than before. "You just don't get it." No longer did the dad make it home in time to see his son. He barely made it to bedtime. Next thing we knew, it was Thursday, and Victoria had dropped by our flat unannounced, her Hermes scarf artfully tucked in, weather permitting. She walked right in without waiting for an invitation and asked, "Would you care to explain why you weren't at the company's annual gala last night?" Bewildered, I gazed at her. "What gala?" Stop acting foolish, Tasha. Celebration of Reynolds Industries' Golden Jubilee. You weren't there, but every other executive and their wife were. I felt sick to my stomach. I didn't know about any gala. Veins narrowed in Victoria's eyes. According to Marcus, you were sick. Do you mean to say that my son lied to me? I sat in the living room in the dark all night long, waiting for Marcus to return home at 11:30. As he entered, he untied his tie and halted abruptly upon spotting me. "Why didn't you tell me about the gala?" Quietly, I inquired. God bless that I had preserved all that proof. When my attorney presented the emails exchanged between Marcus and Sophia, exposing his affair and the vile messages he had directed at me, the judge's expression shifted completely. Those texts, discovered by chance, had uncovered truths I had feared, and the timestamps validated that I wasn't imagining things. The judge scrutinized the evidence, her tone now cutting. "Mr. Reynolds, you claim your wife is unstable, yet these emails suggest that you were the one deceiving her, gaslighting her?" Marcus squirmed in his tailored suit, visibly uncomfortable. In the end, the court granted me primary custody of JJ, ordered Marcus to pay child support, and restricted his visits to every other weekend. With my parents' help, I returned to my accounting job full-time. They took on grandparent duties without complaint, transforming their retirement into full-time care for JJ. It wasn't the life of luxury we had once known, but it was real and it was ours. Their modest home was warm and welcoming, the kind of warmth I had been missing for years. One quiet Saturday morning as I prepared breakfast, a black Range Rover pulled up outside. Marcus and Sophia emerged, dressed in designer outfits worth more than my monthly salary. Without waiting for an invitation, Marcus strode into the house, declaring, "I'm here to see my son." Sophia followed, her gaze sweeping over the cozy but well-loved furniture with a look of disdain. "Oh my God," she sneered, picking up one of Mom's cherished family photos. She laughed. "This place is like a real kennel." I looked her dead in the eye. "Watch what you say." Sophia turned to Marcus, her voice dripping with scorn. "How can you let him live in this shack, darling? And these old folks?" She gestured toward my parents with a dismissive wave. "A Reynolds heir shouldn't be raised here." "Get out of my parents' home," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Now." Marcus smirked, leaning in. "You think you've won in court? Just wait." "Let's go, darling," Sophia whispered, brushing past me. "This place probably has fleas." Stood there, seething as they drove off. The harassment had gone on long enough. I was ready to do something about it. Later that evening, as I sat at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee, Dad joined me. "You can't always play defense, sweetheart," he said, his eyes serious. "Remember Mike Sullivan from my police days? He's a private investigator now, and he's thorough, a real expert at uncovering details." I thought about Sophia's taunts, her emails, and the constant barrage of insults. Maybe this was my chance to finally take a stand. A few days later, I met with Mike Sullivan. He was just as I remembered, rugged but sharp, with a sympathetic look in his eyes. Over the following weeks, Mike uncovered things I never would have imagined. First, Sophia Loren wasn't even her real name. She was Carla Larson, a seasoned con artist who had built a career preying on wealthy men. Even worse, she'd been siphoning funds from Marcus's business accounts and selling insider information to his competitors. She was a criminal hiding behind a veil of luxury and refinement. Mike handed me one last piece of evidence. "Remember that big contract Reynolds Industries lost?" Sophia sold the bid details to their rival just days before the deadline. With all this information, I decided to hold my cards, waiting for the perfect moment. On Wednesday, Marcus's mother, Victoria, called. "James's 60th birthday is Saturday," she said icily. "JJ owes it to his grandfather to be there, and since he's too young to come alone, you'll need to bring him." She paused, then added, "Just remember you're there as JJ's escort. Don't embarrass yourself." James Reynolds's birthday celebration was as grand as expected, the mansion adorned with crystal chandeliers and gold trimmings. As JJ and I walked in, all eyes were on us, assessing, judging, but I held my head high, clutching the evidence in my bag like a secret weapon, waiting for just the right time to play my hand. Victoria approached with a forced smile. "Oh, you actually came?" she said. "JJ dear, come give grandmother a kiss." "Take a seat, darling," he remarked as he sat down across from me. "You can't always rely on a strong defense. Keep Mike Sullivan in mind." Along with me, he was a police officer. Now he's a private investigator, and he's a tremendous stickler for detail who can go undercover with ease. All those terrible letters that Sophia kept sending me, her condescending remarks about my parents, and her haughty face lingered in my mind. "Look at this pitiful pretender." That was her comment on my LinkedIn profile photo earlier that day. "I'm so broke that I can't even buy presentable clothing." Marcus was just as bad. "You remind me of why I upgraded every time I see you in that dump. When I pick up JJ," he wrote in his most recent email, "have fun being a miser with your police father. Would you happen to have Mike's rate, Dad?" I turned to him. Mike Sullivan, a rough guy with kind eyes who had known me since I was a youngster, and I sat down in a modest downtown office 2 days later. Weeks went by. While attempting to tune out Marcus and Sophia's relentless barrage of harassment, I concentrated on my job and JJ. Next, Mike gave a call. "You should visit my workplace," he stated. "Seeing this in person is something you absolutely must do." I was given a large file by him. His first point was that Sophia Loren wasn't actually her given name. She's passing herself off as her sister. Carla Larson is her given name. The more I studied the file, the more trembling my hand became. Sophia worked as an escort before joining Reynolds Industries, a profession in which she would frequently visit wealthy men and live off their money until either they were sick of her or they found out about her small-time scams. She would go by different aliases in different places, vanishing every time things were about to get heated. Reynolds Industries was where her actions were far more detrimental. "Check out these bank transfers," Mike said. "She's been siphoning money from company accounts, small amounts that wouldn't raise red flags. And these emails," he said, displaying screenshots. "She's been selling company information to your in-laws' biggest competitors, product launches, merger plans, everything." With my thoughts racing, I reclined. My husband and the entire Reynolds empire were swindled by the flawless, refined Sophia Loren, who is actually a scam artist. As Mike retrieved yet another folder, he remarked, "There's one more thing. Have you heard about the major contract that Reynolds Industries lost last month? The one that drained their bank accounts. Just 3 days before the deadline, Sophia sold their competitor the bid information. I painstakingly collected all the evidence, producing numerous copies, yet I did nothing. At this time, no, because I learned something new. Timing is crucial. That Sophia didn't. Wednesday morning was when Victoria called. Like before, her voice remained frigid. She casually mentioned, as if she were making an appointment for a root canal, that James' 60th birthday celebration is this coming Saturday. Even though we'd rather have no outside guests, JJ owes it to his grandpa to celebrate his birthday with him, and because he is too little to travel alone, she allowed the phrase to dangle. "The invitation is solely for you to serve as JJ's escort, so keep that in mind," she emphasized. "Keep your distance so as not to cause anyone any embarrassment. 7 o'clock is when the celebration begins." You may have predicted that James Reynolds' 60th birthday bash would be grandiose. Servants carried silver trays laden with champagne as the mansion was adorned with crystal and gold. Upon entering, JJ and I were met with every critical eye. "Oh, you came," Victoria said, her smile tightly wound. "Well, JJ darling, Come give grandmother a kiss." Standing awkwardly beside the appetizer table, I observed my son being led about like a show pony. Everyone else in the room either paid me no mind or muttered something under their breath. While I waited, I held on to the big bag that held Mike's paperwork. Marcus escorted Sophia inside the building at that moment. With dangling diamonds, she had a crimson Valentino gown that was likely more expensive than my automobile. It was Marcus who proclaimed, "Everyone," as he clinked his glass. "I have an announcement to make." He drew Sophia in closer. "My future bride, Sophia Loren, is someone I'd like you to meet. Next spring, she will formally become a part of the Reynolds family." Victoria hurried over to give her a bear hug. At last, an honorable Reynolds woman. James sent me a look and added, "Unlike some people, I come from a good family and was educated at Harvard." Sophia turned into a mop when they stared at her. "I just feel so blessed to be joining such an esteemed family, and I promise to be the kind of wife Marcus truly deserves." I sensed it coming. I steadied my hands and rose to my feet, retrieving the file. "Speaking of what people deserve," I exclaimed, "I have a few things to share about the future Mrs. Reynolds." "Tasha, I don't want you to cause a fuss," Marcus said. "The first document was the one I retrieved. Tell me, Sophia, or should I say Carla Larson, how's your sister feeling about you stealing her identity?" A shade of pink disappeared from Sophia's cheeks. "What is she talking about?" Victoria was demanding. She said, "She has been using her sister's identity, didn't she? Sophia Loren, in real life, is a Minnesota school teacher. Carla Larson, a former escort and comm artist," I said, pointing to her. "She's lying." Despite Sophia's screams, I had already begun gathering documentation, including images, bank accounts, and police reports. "My favorite is this one," I said as I produced additional paperwork. Documents demonstrating her theft from Reynolds Industries are found in the bank records. Consider these emails as evidence that she has been secretly selling your business information to companies like Wagner Manufacturing and Collins Corp for months. The papers were seized from my hands by James Reynolds. The Wagner agreement, merger with Collins. Who was it? You. Sophia fumbled for words as she retreated from Marcus's imposing countenance. "I can explain," she finally announced. "The real Carla Larson has quite the story," I remarked, relishing in every moment. "An assortment of 7 cities, 7 affluent persons, and 7 schemes. Evidently, Reynolds Industries was supposed to rank 8th. All sound had vanished from the room. As Marcus became more perplexed, Victoria more horrified, and James more enraged, I observed their expressions shift as they reviewed the evidence. Then there was Sophia, her flawless facade crumbling as her illusion collapsed. In the blink of an eye, the once polished birthday bash descended into mayhem. As he perused the proof, James Reynolds's face had taken on a disturbing purple hue. He yelled out, "Get out," to Sophia, who was still fumbling for an explanation. "Get out of my house before I have you arrested right here." She reached out for his arm and tried to say, "James, my darling, this is completely false. Everything may be explained by me." "Explain." He threw the papers at her. "Tell me how you ended up costing us the Wagner contract. That deal was worth $20 million. Collins, on the other hand, they were our main rival, and you've been helping them out tremendously." A look of pure hatred crossed Victoria's face as she glanced up from her quiet perusal of the escort service data. She snarled, "You common prostitute," out loud. "You thought you could con your way into our family?" With her high shoes clicking on the marble floor, Sophia retreated towards the door. "Marcus, baby, tell them." Gazing at the old images of Sophia, or Carla, with other rich men made Marcus look like he might be sick. With an eerily still voice, James threatened to contact the police if the intruder did not vacate his property within 30 seconds. "And believe me when I say that you will be seeing many of our solicitors regardless." James looked to his son after Sophia had escaped. Everyone was watching as the partygoers pretended to be engrossed in their champagne. "You brought this woman into our company," James remarked, "entrusted her with sensitive data. For the sake of what? How lovely was she? Had charming legs?" "Dad, I had no idea," Marcus started to say. "Indeed," James yelled out. "You had no idea. Forgot to verify." He looked over at JJ and adjusted his tone slightly. "Without utilizing your brain, of course. Marcus, I'm firing you. Get your office in order by tomorrow." "But Dad—" "And the flat where you currently reside. Owned by the business. Look for a new place to call home." Victoria, who had been unusually silent, abruptly shifted her attention to me. "Tasha," she murmured, her voice suddenly filled with anguish. "Apologies are due to us. Quite a noteworthy one. God only knows how much damage you prevented for our firm." James gave a serious nod. "You were our mistake. Totally incorrect. You've done a better job of living up to the Reynolds reputation than—" He peeked over at Marcus. "When Sophia attempted to board a flight to the Cayman Islands 3 days later, she was apprehended at O'Hare. It was a mountain of evidence, both what I had collected and what the solicitors for Reynolds Industries discovered after they began digging. She was liable to pay hefty fines and face serious fraud accusations. From what I understand, Marcus was residing at the condo of a friend while he sought employment elsewhere. No other banking institution was interested in hiring a man who had been sacked for such egregious carelessness. Everything changed 6 months ago during James Reynolds' birthday celebration. Sitting here in my new flat, which is ideal for JJ and me but not quite as grand as the one I had with Marcus, I feel at peace. I was given it by the Reynolds family as a sign of their gratitude for rescuing their company from Sophia's scams. The least we could do," James had remarked as he passed the keys to me. "After everything, well, you understand. Good schools are in close proximity to the flat, and the neighborhood is pleasant. My home office looks out onto a park, whereas JJ's room is adorned with posters of superheroes. Even though it lacks the opulence of a penthouse with views of a lake, this flat manages to make you feel at home." Only a month ago, Marcus uprooted his life and headed west to California. On a regular Sunday at 7 o'clock in the evening, he contacts JJ. At least he's making an effort to be a dad, even though their phone talks are brief because JJ is still too young to have lengthy ones. I don't mind if he never initiates a conversation with me. Burned bridges remain. Within the Reynolds family, there has been the most noticeable shift. Victoria pays us a weekly visit, and I'm always surprised to see that she brings gifts for both JJ and myself. She dropped over a stunning flower for my window ledge last week. The unexpected dinner invitation from Victoria and James to my parents was the true shocker. There was a noticeable class split during my wedding. The previous time they were all in the same room, so I was anxious. The situation, however, had changed. I was astounded to see how James, clearly interested in his father's experiences on the force, inquired about his tenure. While conversing about gardening, Victoria and Mom shared gardening suggestions, specifically for roses. Towards the evening's conclusion, Victoria addressed my mom as Sarah, saying, "You and Tom raised a remarkable daughter." Our group, yes, I apologize for the delay in noticing it. "We always had an inkling of Tasha's abilities," Mom responded humbly. "Sometimes it just takes others a while to catch up. Nobody has it easy. On days when I want for Marcus to be the man I imagined him to be, I fret over how my son, JJ, will cope with having a father who lives far away. When I see my healthy, happy boy playing with his grandparents, I reassure myself that everything will be all right. I discovered JJ last night poring over a wedding photo of Marcus and me. His question was, 'Do you miss Daddy?' Pulling him near, I took a seat beside him. Sometimes, I admitted with all candor, but guess what? Not everything works out the way we expect it to. Before anything good happens, something bad could happen. Maintaining your authenticity is paramount. As I put him to sleep later, I reflected on how far we had gone, from the Reynolds family's contemptuous treatment of the plain accountant to the lady who rescued their business. The joyful conclusion you were hoping for doesn't always materialize. It can be better at times.